Hi, welcome to Wetpixel Live. My name is Adam Hanlon. I'm the editor of Wetpixel, and we'd like to thank Backscatter Underwater Photo and Video for sponsoring this episode. Backscatter do a huge range of cameras, housings, lenses, ports, pretty much everything you could need for underwater photography and underwater video. So please head on over to backscatter.com. That's backscatter.com to check out what they do. I'm very happy to be joined today by my friend Alex Mustard. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Adam. Actually, I wasn't actually expecting to see you at the moment. I thought you were very unusually not actually in the UK this week.
Yeah.
Weren't you supposed to be in Portugal?
I was, yeah. I was supposed to break my travelling fast this week, and I've been kindly invited to actually the island of Madeira to check out some underwater imaging opportunities for the Portuguese Tourist Authority. So I duly packed my bag, which we'll talk about in a minute, and got in my car, drove down to the airport, and I'd been told that I could have a COVID test on arrival, but unfortunately, because I was transiting via Lisbon, I found that I wasn't able to transit via Lisbon, and I had to have a test before I left, and I didn't have time to have one. So I then put my bags back in my car and drove home again.
You know, fortunate enough, you have both your vaccines now.
Yep.
If you'd had them both earlier and you'd done your time, would you been okay, or would you still need to PCR with the vaccines?
I think they still wanted PCR, and it's the irony is it's PCR for transit. I mean, I wasn't actually going to spend any time in Lisbon. It was purely just to transit through Lisbon on my way to Madeira. And as I said, Madeira, you can actually be tested on arrival. So yeah, very unfortunate. I think 2020 hindsight. I think possibly the lesson here is, before I do the next trip, wherever it may be, I'm going to have a test. And I think that way you're covered whatever happens. So general advice to travelers at this point, when you're planning to travel, regardless of what you may think the case to be, have a test 72 hours before you depart. And then you've got that, and whatever crops up, you can produce a test and say, I've got.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it varies a huge amount around the world, but it's those tests are both difficult to get the timing right.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Because in that you've got to do the test, and then you've got to have, certainly in the UK, you then got to have enough time to get your tests to the drop-off point for the collection for the PCR thing, and then you're hanging on waiting for the result. It's a very cumbersome system.
It is, yeah. And ironically, I could have been tested at the airport in the UK, but it takes 12 hours for the results. So it's not much use, really. There was an accelerated test available, but again, even that was a minimum of 3-hour delay. So
yeah, it's proper PCR, I guess, takes that long. I mean, yeah. I'm sure it's just by someone in a laboratory, and it takes fractions of a second in the lab, but it's got to go to the lab and be done. It's probably got to be one reagent, wait 20 minutes, another reagent, there's your result. I did, before I went to Scotland, I did, rapid flow test. It wasn't obviously an entry requirement for driving up to Scotland, but because I was going to be in close contact with, a group of friends, and although we'd all had at least one vaccine, each, it just, if you're going to spend a period of time, we weren't sharing rooms or sharing vehicles or anything, but we were going to be around each other, and, it's nice to turn up knowing that case. But I know myself, I'm sort of sitting, at home, enviously looking down my Facebook feed. And, here in the UK, we're basically restricted from going almost anywhere right now. Yeah. Whereas in other countries, those restrictions don't apply. And so, and people are allowed to go to certain places that are a lot more useful diving. I know a lot of our American friends have been traveling pretty widely in recent times and getting some fabulous diving in, and I'm both very happy for them and very envious. I'm as green as my green screen background is.
I think. I mean, again, a side note of caution, though. I think that not all is plain sailing. I've heard some fairly difficult stories of people's experiences around the place, particularly obviously on liverboards, for example, where there has been an outbreak on the liverboard, or people have tested positive on the liverboard, and then everyone on the liverboard being quarantined wherever they're at. I mean, it's not plain sailing. I think you really need to be, if you get the opportunity to travel, I'm really champing at the bit, particularly having given my experience now. But I think it's something that you should go into with your eyes wide open. It's not as plain and clear cut as it used to be. Yeah.
Yeah, I think particularly like some of the rule things that can be imposed on you in that, if you are deemed to be part of a group in a resort or in a liveaboard, and someone within that group tests positive, what implications does that have for your travel? And I think you need to make sure. I think particularly my main advice to anyone traveling at the moment is make sure that you have the appropriate insurance for the travel that you're doing, bearing in mind what can go wrong. For example, should you test positive, and the vaccines are not 100%, so even if you've been double vaccinated and you think you're absolutely fine, maybe you get a new variant that is contagious on that vaccine, or maybe you're one of that very small percentage who can catch something. And it's not necessarily a case of being ill in another country now. It's a case of not being able to pass a PCR test to be able to get out of the country.
Yeah, big standard.
Yeah, and that can take a while, because particularly if you're isolated as a group, if say you're, just, for the sake of argument, you're on a liveaboard, someone on the liveaboard tests positive, and you basically, and the local authorities rule is if someone in your bubble has tested positive, you all have to isolate for whether it's 10 days or 2 weeks. And then if someone else tests positive during that 2 weeks, I guess the counter gets reset again.
I don't know.
You could, it could become very common, which is why I think you need to make sure that you have, that those COVID, because it's such an unknown and it could be so variable around the world. You need to have that COVID secure insurance in there, even if you're double vaccinated, even if you're PCR clean on the way out, even if you are able, you feel to be completely isolated from any risk personally on a trip. It doesn't mean that you can't get caught out by the bureaucracy associated with someone who you're interacting with testing positive.
Yeah, and it could become very expensive. I mean, without insurance, if you're stranded in a foreign country, they could well be charging you for accommodation and all this kind of stuff, and you have no choice in it. You've got to pay it.
Even in our country, coming back from places, and then you can get in the awkward situation, for example, here in the UK, where you could travel to a country that's travel is allowed to, and then the COVID outbreak that you get caught up in gets the country red listed, and then you have to come back and do 2 weeks paid quarantine because you couldn't get back before the deadline. Because just joking slightly, but it could all spiral that way, and you could end up being delayed even a month after traveling. Right now, it's not a lot of fun. No. So I think you've got a flight, Adam, not being
possibly. I thought though, obviously, what would be interesting to chat about a little bit is some of the stuff that I did before I went, because obviously as we start traveling again, this is my first, it would have been my first opportunity to travel for quite a long time. So I thought I'd just chat briefly, and the first thing I thought that I'd mention is the fact that I've had all my diving gear serviced because I've had time to do it. And frequently, actually, it's one of those things that I don't get around to doing probably as frequently as I should because it gets used a lot. So anyway, unfortunately, I sent it all off and had it all serviced and put it all back together again and discovered all sorts of leaky O-rings and stuff that hadn't been picked up in the service, because the service tends to concentrate on the mechanical parts of it, not the soft rubber parts. And so I was very, very glad that before I'd set off, I actually put my gear together. I actually taken it for a dive, and there were bubbles and things coming out of places there shouldn't have been, and I was able to remedy that. They were all simple fixes. It was new hoses, it was that kind of stuff. But again, these are the kinds of things that possibly it's worth. We tend to talk a lot about camera gear here, but my diving gear again would have been a problem, despite having been serviced, interestingly enough. So it's a worthwhile exercise. And the other thing,
I'm giving my camera gear a little bit of a workout of late, so that's been
it's
not heavy workout, but been getting the odd dive in each week. So it's nice to have that feeling of having a few new pictures coming in, as well as just processing up old ones.
Yeah, I've been watching social media. It's been nice to see the green water stuff, Alex. Very nice.
Yeah, easy to find green water at the moment because for those watching this, it's May here in the UK, and that usually means in the sea a lot of plankton bloom around. Particularly anytime the weather gets calm enough for diving to be good, you get big blooms. And then when it's not bloom, it's because it's got too rough to go diving, basically. So it's always a challenging month to get in. April's usually a better dive month. May it gets a bit murky with the plankton bloom, and then it begins to settle down into the summer conditions of not super clear but more reliable.
So in terms of the camera gear, what I did was I actually managed to I polished my dome ports, which I thought, well, I washed and then polished my dome ports, which needed doing, and then I also changed out all the batteries on my cameras. So obviously it has a TTL converter, optical converter, the batteries in that, the batteries in the leak detector, they were still working, but at the end of the day they were a bit of an identity. So I went in for the sake of a few dollars, it made sense just to replace them all. So I replaced them all, and then again did the same thing. Took it for a dive, make sure everything was working, got the strobes working, and made sure everything was working. So, and then with it fully assembled, basically disassembled it and put it in my case. So I knew at that point that I had everything that I needed to go diving with. Um, and I think that was it's been so long. I have a bit of a mental checklist. I'm normally pretty good at remembering what I need to take with me, but not having done it for so long, it was definitely a bit of a challenge. So I felt that was a really worthwhile exercise. And I think even if you don't have the opportunity to possibly take it diving, put your whole rig together. If you're taking both macro and wide angle setups, put them both together, and put all the bits in a box, and that's your box that you're going to travel with, and fire a few shots with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the part of me that I've been sort of keeping serviced is also my underwater photography brain. And there's no doubt for me, doing these Wetpixel Lives with you, doing the online teaching I've done, has really kept my underwater photography knowledge in the front of my brain. And I think it's actually really helped me. And I'd encourage, and also enjoying watching, content that other people have produced as well. Yep. And I think that's a really important thing in this period where we've maybe not been able to get in the water as much. And I've found that I've gone in the water and I've perhaps almost made better decisions than if I'd just been diving the week before, because I've really been thinking my underwater photography through, having to answer your questions or do teaching. And I think it's put me in a really good place. I've had some dives in recent days in quite poor conditions, but have got really nice imagery out of those dives because I think I feel like I'm really on top of my technical thinking. So I'm making really good decisions about my photography, which is really helping.
Yeah, and I mean, I certainly I have I've watched your wide angle macro masterclass workshop, and there's so much in there that you just immediately thinking light bulb moment, light bulb moment, light bulb moment, and it's because I think to some extent having the separation, being able to I'm not thinking about going diving tomorrow because I'm not going diving tomorrow, so I'm able to kind of think things through in a more logical way, and I think I definitely feel I'm going to come out of this with a whole bunch of ideas that I'm really keen to try out. And inevitably some of them won't work, but those that do, could be I think probably rejuvenate some of my imaging really. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we just want to be able to get back out there again, really, don't we?
Yeah. Sooner the better. So anyway, brief kind of situation report about my abortive travel. Unfortunately, Alex's talks are available. What was the name of the platform, Alex?
Photography Experts. Particularly that wide angle macro one is on there.
Yeah. And you can go on there.
Anyone wants to watch, it's a massive long talk. It's like it's everything you ever wanted to know about wide angle macro and quite a lot more. But it's it's a really nice resource if you really want to dive into that topic.
Yeah. So I think we'll stick a link in the show notes just to say that so you can find your way to it. So thank you very much, Alex. And I'd like to thank Backscatter again very much for sponsoring this episode. We really appreciate the sponsor support. I'd like to thank you all for watching. Please feel free to add any comments about your experiences of traveling at the moment and what precautions you take in order to travel safely. And drop us a like if you enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing you again soon. All the best.